hey, like, do you like do consulting or coaching or help like people? Because clearly you know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about, but I don't know what you know, and I don't know what I don't know. So like, can you help? And you're like, yeah, let's grab some time. And I think you were like shocked because like, who is this person coming from cold? And it's like,
And I think that was a new experience for me as well because I wasn't. I genuinely wasn't looking for business. I didn't need the business. And I think
right.
myself and a few others reached out. And I was like, okay, we want right. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, let's see if you're serious. Here's the payment form to see if you're like a real deal. And I was like, yeah, I want to pay you for your time. Like, let's help me. And and we grabbed some time, and we I showed you what I knew, and you saw where I was, and you started to help me, like, essentially kind of point me in the right direction of how to approach marketing. And we know we continued to do that for a little while, and then you told me that you were putting a course together and you're going to cover some concepts like this more formally, and I was like, cool, like, where do I sign up for it, like, right now? And I think you launched a few months later in 2018, and I credit like your course and the application of material that was in your course for, I would say, almost all of our growth last year.
Unbelievable.
I joined the course, and what's different about your course versus others is that you released all the material at the same time instead of dripping it. Like some courses, like they tend to drip week to week. You released it all, and what that it did for me, I was like, oh good, I'm going to go to the nuggets that I want to see right now. And I actually like began like skipping forward, and it was a no, but I did it because I wanted to like get to like the crux of it, and I applied things early by skipping forward, and they worked. That's fine. But then I was like, okay, come on, like, I did this thing for a reason. Let me go through like the foundational material, like and I was like, I hope it's not like John Loomer style foundation or like, here's how you install your Pixel. No, it wasn't. It's fine. Like, again, like, that's great material and it's appropriate for the right audience, but I was like, I'm here for like structural foundations for scaling. And I started it from the beginning, and I read through it, I watched it, I took notes, I was devising plans, like, and then I implemented the foundations that you talked about in the course step by step, and all of that together caused just an enormous growth in the business.
So where's your business at now? Kind of how's things going for you?
Well, it's been really wonderful. I can't complain. It's in the hundreds of percent of growth year over year after applying the material. Continues to grow. We're at end of Q1 now. We're supposed to be seeing end of Q1 hell, and we're not seeing that. Like, it's, of course, it's not as good as it is like when there's no auction, but like this time last year, like, it was really rough, and like we're not seeing that now. I don't know if that is just that end of Q1 is different. It doesn't seem to be. I do see plenty of people, not in your group, screaming about the challenges of being end of Q1 right now. But I think like those of us who have like built in the risk diversification that's talked about in the course, we're able to have a much more stable acquisition channel, like, regardless of normal competition cycles.
Like, what would be your feedback for someone who's unsure of the training program, on the fence, needs to make a decision?
So here's kind of like the landscape, right? Like, so once you have essentially graduated from the basics, like, you got something going, you got some traction, like, you have to, if you're an agency, if your clients have traction in their accounts, then it is time for your course. Now, when you look at your course in terms of the landscape of things that are out there, so you have, iStack events and like Tim Bird talks, you have your course, you have other private masterminds. Here's kind of how it all actually works together. Like, I'm not saying anything one is actually better than the other, but that it works together and in more of like a sequence. So like let me talk about everybody else and then talk about you. So like, I have a lot of iStack like material and videos. And what I did is I that's kind of how I got into this space, and I had that before we started working together. And like, what I learned is, and Timber's techniques are exceptional, and is that like Those talks are very specific scaling techniques that work like at a theoretical level, and then you have to deploy it. And those are typically vertical scaling techniques that easily had to be learned like from Tim Bird's prior talks, and then some exploratory stuff in the more recent days. And then you have what did I say? And then you have a few other courses that are speakers out there, and you're learning individual scaling strategies that may help when deployed correctly. But what is missing from the landscape is a systematic approach to scaling the entire business so that it has lift. And that is where your methodology comes in. It's like you do talk about, in your own way, how the surfing methodology and the vertical scaling and things like that, that's all covered in your material. But that's actually covered way deep into the material. At first, it's about like, here is what's going on with the structure of the account. Here's what's going on with the different approaches to signaling, the different approaches to building out like how it should be done. And now let's talk about scaling. Now let's talk about survey. Let's talk about this. And now here's how you use these machines and rules to do that. And here's some basic rule sets that will help you do it with the premises and the vocabulary that you talk to. And that is the difference, I think, between everybody. Now that if you invest in your course and you have a strong understanding of the foundations, you build in those foundations, then if you start watching, like if you go back and rewatch your old ISAC videos, or you go to the events, the live events, and you hear like what are some of the more bleeding edge techniques, and then you bring those techniques into your account, now you're like really rocking it, because you already have the foundation set for scaling, and then now you're bringing in a new technique for exploratory. And then we have seen that happen in the last few months with CBO. With CBO being like the new rage, and it is. It's like, well, where does CBO fit into the account? And then how do you then plan for September's full CBO deployment? And all of that is covered in the principles of your course, because it doesn't really matter what the tactic ends up being. Is if your strategy is set at the foundational level, then it will handle the different changes and tactics that happen over time as Facebook matures.